mention.
This episode of Hot Cup Cold Case contains disturbing details about a violent crime and may not be appropriate for some listeners. Well, I'm Brant.
I'm Rachael.
I'm Kelsey.
And this is Hot Cup.
Cold Case.
Yes, nailed it.
First time.
And we have some exciting stories for you tonight. So we're going to share a cold case. I'm going to share a cold case that Rach and Kelsey are unaware
No
of.
idea.
And then Rach is going to share a closed case because we need closure after a cold case.
Oh.
Always need closure.
And then Kelsey's got a fun mugshot story for us.
Mm-hmm.
So, welcome to our first episode.
Yay!
Or if you're listening to the podcast backwards, welcome to the season finale.
Hello.
There's literally no other episodes earlier than this one, except maybe the mock recording, and I'm not sure that we'll ever release that one.
Well, and hopefully if you listen backwards, then we
Get
were
worse.
better. And now we got worse.
Yes, if you're listening
We'll see.
to us backwards,
It's a devolution.
We're sorry.
We're in Rachael.
we've been slowly getting worse, and now that you're at the season finale, we're at our worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
This is
doesn't
as
get
bad as
much
it
worse than this.
So, I went and got my haircut today. I didn't tell Rach this.
That you got your hair cut. Did you
She
save
figured
it
that
for
part
the
out.
podcast?
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk about anything until the podcast.
This is deeply and gravely affecting your marriage.
Yes, ever since we started podcasting, we keep secrets from each other now because
We're like,
wanna-
we're not going to have anything to talk about.
we want to reveal things to one another.
It's weird you guys
On air.
don't even live together anymore.
I don't know what you're gonna do.
Yeah, I do it for the pod.
Well, I went and got my hair cut, and my hairdresser was asking me what our plans for the weekend were. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just happened to mention that we're recording an episode of our podcast tonight. And before I know it, everybody in the salon is interested in what the name of our podcast is.
God.
And is like writing the name
No
down.
way!
Like, to
Shut up.
So they might be listening
What?
right now.
Oh my
So
God.
do you guys want a hint about my cold case tonight?
Yes.
Do.
Okay. This is the only unsolved case of air-piracy in the United States.
I already love it. I should have
All
worn
right.
my ruffly shirt.
When I was in high school, I'm not kidding, I had one of those white ruffly shirts that Fabio would wear like while riding on horseback on a beach.
Oh
You know, the
my
kind that
Yes,
is like a
Brant.
deep V-neck
Yes,
with
I'm
like
trying
a
not to
lace.
think about
And
this.
it has the like elastic at the wrist,
Yeah,
and
why
then it's
did
like
you
rough.
have that?
Not only did I have it,
No.
but I wore it
Yeah,
to high
you
school
did.
No.
on multiple occasions.
Just for like a Tuesday, or like it's
Why?
Spirit Week, and you have to dress up like a
I just
I don't know.
No, I just thought it was cool. And
Did you
also
wear a vest with it?
no.
Oh,
Also I tucked it in to my pants.
did you wear a nice chunky belt?
And I just remember this one girl, her name is Eden.
Hi, Eden.
Eden. Hey Eden.
What's up, girl?
I'm sure she remembers me
She's like, it's that guy with the shirt.
because when I walked into class that day, she goes, "Okay, Brant." Like totally called attention to it. Everybody in the class stared at me.
And listeners, Brant and I are married. How? I don't know. Thankfully, I didn't know him then. My God.
It might have happened sooner though if he had worn the shirt while you guys were dating.
No.
If Rachel had met me in junior high, for sure she wouldn't have been able to keep her hands off me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I mean, Rachel loves a white ruffly shirt.
Yeah, in a deep V.
If there's anything Rachel loves, it's a prepubescent kid with chest hair.
Smells like Axe body.
Oh my God.
That's so funny you say that because I was also terrified to take a shower in the gym because
Oh,
you know,
I was like, just in general.
no, I mean,
we definitely wouldn't have hit it.
I was afraid to take a shower in front of other guys at the junior high. And so
Okay,
I
that's fair.
literally would just cover myself in a can of Axe and go back to school.
Yeah.
So gross. I
Yeah,
remember that.
that's more common than you realize. So don't be ashamed by that.
Oh,
You
no,
don't
we
have
know.
to wear that shame alone, Brant. Literally, there was a kid in high school, and his name was Joe, and his locker was next to my best friend's locker, and he would just, after every class period, and my high school was very small. There were 2 hallways,
Oh gosh.
so 50% of the hallways were like just completely saturated with the smell
Oh my
of Joe's Axe body spray, and everybody would be like, "Oh my God, Joe, stop!"
Joe!
Like, "Oh, Joe,
It's so
"What,
funny.
man? Stop it, you emo kid."
That's so funny.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this is the case.
Did you give us the hint?
Yes. I think
Oh yeah, air
It
piracy.
was a long time ago.
buckle up because this is the case of D.B. Cooper. This is one of my favorite cold cases of all time.
So excited.
It's November 24th, 1971, the day before
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. And a man wearing a black necktie and business attire approached the ticket counter of Northwest Orient Airlines in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
He's approximately 6 feet tall. He appeared to be in his mid-40s. And using the name Dan Cooper, he used cash to buy a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington, which was about a 30-minute flight. And he boarded flight number 305, a Boeing 727. And do you guys want to guess how much his plane ticket was in 1971?
$2.
Like $5.
It was $20.
Oh.
That's crazy.
So he made his way to his seat and sat down in seat 18C, lit a cigarette,
Oh, so gross.
and ordered a bourbon and soda from a flight attendant.
What a baller move.
That's a power move right there.
That absolutely.
But can we just talk about why it was appropriate to smoke on a tube in the air?
You literally smoked everywhere.
I
though.
know, but there was no windows or anything. Like,
But
that's
like,
my nightmare. It's so
I
disgusting.
mean, in the 50s through the 70s, probably well into the 80s and 90s, cigarette smoke was everywhere.
It was the 70s. He probably bummed the cigarette off the 12-year-old sitting next to him.
That's true. Literally, man, we keep stopping for stories, but literally my grandmother, she would tell me stories of she would call herself a World War II hustler because she was like 9 and she would walk to the corner store and the owner would give her cigarettes and she would sell them to people because it was during the Depression.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so she
Dang.
was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 peddling cigarettes to people.
Okay, that's a baller.
Yeah, my grandma was a baller. She was the best.
Yeah, my grandma was the best.
She was.
I love it.
Here's a fun fact for you. You could smoke on a plane up until 1988.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that does not surprise
Disgusting.
me.
And there were kids on the flights. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I read an article that said part of the reason that they banned it was because they have air circulators on the planes and they were getting clogged with tar and nicotine
Gross. But they're like,
from the
no,
cigarette smoke.
it's fine. Just
like,
inhale
it's all
that.
right.
So later that afternoon, around 3 o'clock, the pilots who were flying the plane were surprised when one of the flight attendants approached the cockpit to inform them of specific instructions she had been given to deliver a note to the captain.
Oh, that's bad news.
The note informed the captain that a man on board was carrying an explosive device in his briefcase and threatened the safety of everyone on board unless his demands were met. And the flight attendant then proceeded to tell the pilot and the co-pilot that shortly after the plane had become airborne, that the man in 18C had quietly handed her a note. And the note indicated he was carrying a bomb in his briefcase. And then the man proceeded to open a cheap attaché that he was traveling with and revealed a tangled mess of multicolored wires and tubes that were all connected to a central battery.
Oh, Lord.
Then he instructed her to take a seat next to him and told her to write down all of his demands. And that was the note that she was instructed to deliver to the pilot.
Uh-oh.
They don't get paid enough for that.
Yeah, so she went on to explain that what the note said was that upon their arrival in Seattle, the man in 18C intended to hold all 36 passengers on board hostage until he received $200,000 in $20 bills,
Why?
which is approximately worth $1.2 million today.
That's crazy.
Why 20s?
Yeah,
though?
why 20s?
I don't know.
Why you gotta be so specific like that?
And then he wanted 4 military-grade parachutes, additional fuel for the plane, and food for the flight crew.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be flown around by hungry people.
Angry.
That's a good point.
It was, sure, it seems nice, but it's purely motivated for his own personal gain.
Yes. And also, I just feel like hijackers were nicer and more charming in 1970s.
You know what? You're right. They had a little more civility about them.
Oh my
They had class.
Yeah, class. Yeah, let's go with that.
So once the FBI learned of the hijacking, hostage negotiators arranged for Dan Cooper's demands to be met. And they considered sabotaging the parachutes, but decided not to in case the hijacker had demanded 4 because he intended to give them to some of the innocent flight crew. But they did try to scramble jets, a helicopter, and a C-130 aircraft from a nearby Air Force base to intercept the plane and follow it. But it was too late. So after the plane had landed and every one of his demands had been met, Dan Cooper released everyone on board the aircraft except for 2 pilots, 1 flight engineer, and the flight attendant.
Yeah.
So those 4 parachutes that he requested, it almost seems like he's going to give them to the 4 members of the flight crew he left on board and then just like take the plane. Night had fallen and it had begun to rain. This is the night before Thanksgiving.
So cinematic.
The man instructed the pilots to set a course for Mexico City, and the plane took off again around 7:30 that night. Approximately 45 minutes into their flight, the man instructed the flight attendant to join the pilots in the cockpit, and then he ordered them to slow the plane's speed to 200 knots while lowering the altitude to 10,000 feet, which is very specific instructions.
Very specific.
So he knows what he's talking about.
It seems like it. Then he strapped on 2 of the 4 parachutes.
Great.
One on front, one on back.
Just in case.
He secured the money to himself, and then he lowered the aircraft's fuselage ramp. You know those...
In the air?
Yes, the stairway.
What?
He lowered it from the bottom of the plane. And somewhere north of Portland, we're not really sure, but it was over a heavily wooded area, the man approached the edge of the ramp and simply leapt into the night sky. And that was the last time anyone ever saw Dan Cooper.
That's crazy.
Insane.
But the story doesn't end there. So the pilots eventually land the plane with the fuselage ramp still down.
Oh my Lord.
And once they land, of course, the FBI confiscates the aircraft and they begin to comb it for evidence. But the only trace of this mysterious hijacker that they could find was a black necktie and a pearl pin that was left behind on seat 18C.
Again, also a baller move.
That is a power move if I ever heard one.
That's so
crazy.
cool.
I wonder if
if
anybody
you're gonna-
committing crimes in 2019 is going to be talked about this way in
I don't
like
know.
60 years.
Probably
I just
not.
feel like criminals were more classy in 2019.
They like documented everything they did on Instagram.
So the FBI launches a full-scale investigation, and they went on to interview hundreds of people. They actually attempted to determine exactly where D.B. Cooper had jumped from the plane. So they took the Boeing 727 and they flew it out over the ocean and then lowered the fuselage ramp and dropped weights to try to determine
That's pretty crazy.
where he might have jumped. And once they had done that, they kind of narrowed down the area he might have jumped in. the military joined the search, and with nearly 1,000 troops, they searched the jump zone on foot
My God.
That's crazy.
while helicopters flew overhead. But get this, nothing was ever recovered.
That's crazy.
No parachute, no money, no body.
Oh my gosh.
He had just disappeared. So the press later misidentified the man that called himself Dan Cooper. They later misidentified him as D.B. Cooper, and that's the name by which he's known today. So in the months following the hijacking, news sources across the United States and Canada began receiving anonymous letters from someone claiming to be D.B. Cooper. And the cryptic letters were created with magazine clippings.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's old black and white photos online that you can
cool.
Oh, that's super
that you can
fun.
find. I'll have to post these on our Instagram because there is something about it that's so cool.
It's, gosh, he's the coolest criminal.
So he's such a role model.
What an absolute dreamboat.
You know what? I feel like you'd get along with your grandma.
Yeah. Oh my God. My
Maybe they
grandma
were in
was
on it
D.B.
together.
Cooper. No, she probably had a fling with him.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
she probably sold him
definitely.
a cigarette at least once
Yo,
or twice.
yeah.
Oh my
No.
god, that's really crazy.
So the letters were not only made of magazine clippings, but they were taunting the FBI.
Sorry, Rich just
looking
showed
at
me a
them.
picture of him.
Oh, that's really cool.
That is.
I mean,
so.
It's a crime, people, but
Oh, it's absolutely wrong.
it's super cool.
But if you're gonna do something bad, do it with style.
Like D.B. Cooper.
The moral of the story is
If you're gonna be a criminal, be a cool one. One that doesn't hurt people.
Yeah, don't hurt anyone. Make sure you buy your flight staff food.
Yeah.
so the letters were not only made of magazine clippings, but they taunted the FBI.
Yeah.
And kind of mocked the investigation into the identity of D.B. Cooper. But these letters offered no definitive proof that they were actually sent by the real hijackers. So we don't really know if those letters came from the real D.B. Cooper or someone pretending to be D.B. Cooper. Like I said, news sources across the United States and Canada received these letters.
So interesting.
So that's either indicative of his escape, like the where he went after he escaped, or it's just people from around the country
bunch of copycats.
mailing these letters in. So over the next 5 years, the FBI went on to investigate nearly 800 suspects and eventually narrowed their investigation to a couple dozen people. 9 years later, in 1980, somewhere north of Portland on the Columbia River, a young boy named Brian Ingram is digging a fire pit with his dad in the sand when he unearths something incredible.
Oh my gosh.
3 stacks of $20 bills that amounted to $5,800.
Oh, wow.
So they call the police, and over the phone, they read off the serial numbers for these $20 bills and determine that these are, in fact, the serial numbers belonging to the bills that D.B. Cooper had been given.
That is so crazy.
Yeah.
So did he just hide them and forget about it?
So we don't know because they only uncovered a few. It's
Right.
possible that he lost some money on the way down.
Yeah.
It's possible that he lost all of it. And this is just a few bills that we recovered. But the FBI actually gave Brian some of the actual bills back.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Yeah. And he later proceeded to auction them off.
Oh, that is a smart kid.
And do you want to know
That's
how
a
much?
baller move.
There's a lot of ballers
What-
in this
gosh,
story.
What a baller.
This story's just full of ballers. Do you want to guess how much each bill went for at
Like
auction?
a single dollar.
A single $20
$20
bill
Like thousands?
known to be possessed by D.B. Cooper at one point.
Like thousands?
Yeah, probably like $2,000 a piece.
$6,500 each.
Oh
my gosh.
The biggest baller of all.
Let's
Clearly.
just slow clap for the real hero.
Brian. How old was Brian?
He was
like 8, like your
he was a
grandma.
young boy when he discovered
Brian.
he was a young boy when he discovered the bills, but
He's still living large off that D.B. Cooper money.
in an ironic twist, what if Brian was DB Cooper or his dad was DB Cooper?
Oh my gosh.
He's like, come on, son, let's go to the Columbia River and dig a fire pit.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
really specific area.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh my god.
And
I
also-
like that theory.
Yeah, it's just a theory that I'm working on.
Yeah.
But also, why did they even call the police to begin with? If you found $5,800,
No, I'm not telling anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, because I'm looking at pictures and it looks like they were just crumbling.
Oh yeah, they look like they're disintegrated. Okay, that makes
Like
more
maybe
sense.
he caught them on fire when he was building the fire pit. I'm serious.
Well, some investigators believe that the money actually washed downstream along the river, and that it was originally located further upstream. So now I want to get into some of the theories
Yes.
surrounding.
We love some conspiracy
Give me
theories.
all of the conspiracy theories.
Yes, here are the theories surrounding DB Cooper and his possible identity.
Okay.
Some people believe DB Cooper probably had skydiving experience,
No kidding.
or may
He
have,
was a pilot.
yeah,
Military experience.
or may have possibly been a former military
Yeah.
paratrooper or in the Air Force. They claim only an experienced skydiver or a former military paratrooper would request military grade parachutes
Yeah.
because they were the only parachutes that would be designed to withstand the Air Force at 10,000 feet.
Oh, okay.
But others argue that the military grade parachutes actually point to Cooper's inexperience because a military grade parachute can't be steered,
Oh.
which means once he leapt from the aircraft, he was just at the mercy of the wind.
Okay.
So the FBI searched the beach, but the beach where they uncovered the
Mm-hmm. That cash money.
that cash money, but no new evidence was ever uncovered. And in 2016, the Bureau officially closed their investigation. So
Oh, wow.
just a few years ago from this recording. Some people believe that DB Cooper simply died.
Like during the event?
Yeah, that he
Really?
never survived the fall.
But they never found his body.
Right, that's what others argue. Not only did they never find his body, but they never found the parachutes.
Anything.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
So some people believe DB Cooper was actually Richard Floyd McCoy. And this is a guy that I'd like to get into on another episode, but I'll
Okay.
give you a brief glimpse into this man's life. He was a Vietnam veteran,
Okay.
a helicopter pilot,
Mm-hmm.
and a skydiver.
Oh, interesting.
And what makes him such a person of interest in this case is that less than 5 months after the hijacking of flight number 305
No,
by DB Cooper.
skyjacking.
Yes, thank you. The FBI learned of another skyjacking in progress. Once again, the mysterious skyjacker had demanded parachutes, but this time the FBI were able to apprehend him, and he was later identified as Richard Floyd McCoy.
Oh my gosh.
McCoy became one of the investigators' prime suspects, but he was later ruled out based on his age because eyewitness descriptions of DB Cooper described him as being a man in his mid-40s, and McCoy was only 29 at the time.
Oh.
Other people believe that DB Cooper's real identity is Robert Rachael.
What a
He-
name.
Two Roberts here. No?
Richard.
Oh, Richard.
Got Richard and Robert. Dick and Bobby.
What?
Isn't that... What? Is it Dick?
This is not
No,
a family
it-
podcast.
Dick is
Yes.
a nickname for Richard. and
Yes.
Bobby is a nickname for Robert.
Robert.
Yeah, I
Okay,
thought you were
but
saying
still.
like a quippy saying that everybody
I
says,
was
and
like-
I wasn't catching on.
I was calling them by their street names.
Yeah,
We're buying new chairs. I can't do this. I'm so uncomfortable during this podcast. I can't. I'm solely serious. Like, I cannot do this.
Yes, we need to get some rocking chairs.
Okay, I have to get something. I can't do this.
Okay, so we took a break to get my wife a bouncy exercise ball.
I have back problems. I'm a young woman with very 90-year-old back problems.
She's 31 going on 82.
I know, that's bad.
It's a big age jump, but
Do you remember growing up in
That's
Texas
fine.
and listening to 107.5?
well, this is totally
The Oasis.
I never listened to that ever.
It was a smooth jazz radio station.
Brant, only you would listen to smooth jazz when you're in like junior high and high school.
Oh, were you wearing your shirt?
God. And yes, my husband sounds like he's dying when he laughs.
I brought it back. Full circle.
Full circle.
I am dying. My wife has the back of an 80-year-old and I have the laugh of an 80-year-old.
It is quite wheezy, isn't it?
Oh my god. Okay, so back to the Oasis.
Oh.
I used to listen to it while I was falling asleep. And it was a radio station hosted by a woman, like, in her bedroom.
Oh, is this Delilah?
Her name was Delilah.
Yes,
and
but I
she
never-
had, like, the most
What?
sultry voice ever. And she would just...
How old were you when you were listening to
I
this?
know, inappropriate.
So I was probably only, like, 9 or 10 years
Oh my
old.
Wait,
god.
that's fantastic.
Laying in bed with a ruffle shirt. You're like, Delilah.
To Delilah. The smooth sounds of Delilah. Okay. So,
Serious.
Robert Rackstraw.
Okay.
He was a former U.S. Army paratrooper with explosives training. And some investigators believe he was the author of those anonymous letters from D.B. Cooper.
Interesting.
But others argue that even if he was the author of those letters, like I said, that doesn't mean he's the real D.B. Cooper.
Right.
Some reports even say that Rackstraw's own lawyer said that he was only claiming to be D.B. Cooper to impress women.
Oh my
Again,
gosh.
a baller move.
If you can't be a baller, pretend to be a baller.
Pretend to be one.
And this last theory is my favorite theory. This one's really compelling, and I really want this one to be true.
Yes.
So there is one woman who has been interviewed by both ABC and CNN
Really?
who believes wholeheartedly that her uncle was D.B. Cooper.
Oh my gosh.
Her name is Marla Cooper. So Cooper
Same last name.
may have
in
not
the
been an
family.
alias.
Okay.
She claims that when she was 8 years old, her extended family had gathered at her grandmother's house for Thanksgiving in Sisters, Oregon, which is only 3 hours away from where DB Cooper's DB Coopy, as I like to call him. Old Coopy. It was only 3 hours away from
The
where
job site?
from where the money was discovered
Oh, okay.
on the Columbia River. So her grandmother's house was only three.
Godly,
Why?
I'm having a really hard time with this.
I don't know, but I was thinking when you said, "Oh, Dick and Bobby," and I was like, "DB."
It was actually both of them.
Oh my god.
Guys, we just cracked the case.
Yeah, we did.
It was Dick and Bobby. It was actually two men, one sitting on top of another one's shoulders.
In a trench coat.
They were actually 12-year-olds who
It's
sold
weird.
cigarettes.
It's weird how the flight attendant didn't notice, like, you know, a 12-year-old kid doing like a, "Oh, excuse me, miss." Like,
Like a little rascals.
the handwriting's really bad.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so her whole family is gathered at her grandmother's house for Thanksgiving, for Thanksgiving week.
Okay.
And they're 3 hours away from where D.B. Cooper's cache was later discovered. So Marla says she remembers days before Thanksgiving, her uncle L.D., Lynn Doyle Cooper, who she believes is D.B. Cooper, along with her other uncle, Dewey, left the house to go on a quote-unquote hunting trip.
Okay.
Always suspicious.
And here's where it gets really interesting. She says that the day after the heist, so this is early Thanksgiving morning, her two uncles suddenly returned to the house, but her uncle LD
Yeah.
is a bloody mess.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting.
And her uncle Dewey tells her that he was just in a bad car accident
Really?
and instructs her to go get her dad.
Okay.
And she's worried because her uncle LD seems very distraught, like he's just been through something really horrible. And she goes and gets her dad and says that she later overhears them talking. And one of her uncles says to her dad, "We did it. Our money problems are over."
What?
That's crazy.
And that's how the story ends.
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah. You have to go watch the interview with her because
That's insane.
she says in her interview that her uncle LD later became estranged from the family. He kind of disappeared. And when her grandmother died, she expected to see him at the funeral and he didn't show up. And she asked her dad about it at one point. And her dad said, "Well, honey, I suspect that he's hiding." And she said, "Hiding from who?" And her dad just responded, "The FBI."
What?
Right. She then said that when her dad was on his deathbed, as he was nearing death, he began talking about his long-lost brother. And she asked him, "Dad, what long-lost brother?" And he says, "You remember the one who hijacked that plane."
What?
What?
And that is the story of old DB Coopy.
DB Coopy.
Coops?
Ooh.
So, Rach, you've got a closed case for us. And do you want to give us a hint?
Yes, this closed case happened kind of in our backyard.
So this is literally close to home.
I love
Very close to home.
I love when crime happens in my backyard.
Yeah, isn't that?
Yeah.
It's just the best.
The best.
So
It's right up there with 12-year-olds selling cigarettes for me.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's one of my favorite things.
Yes, it's fantastic.
There's heavy sarcasm all throughout this conversation, in case anyone is not picking up on that.
I don't
All
think
right.
anyone takes us seriously.
Oh, good. I really hope not.
Okay, so in a suburb of Metro Detroit, there lived a comfortable family, a very successful businesswoman and mother, Tara Grant, and her husband, Stephen Grant, who was a stay-at-home dad to their two young kids, Ian and Lindsay. Both were under the age of 6. On November 14th, 2007, Stephen, the father and husband of Tara, called the Macomb County Sheriff's Office to report his wife had been missing for 5 days.
5 days?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say
Okay,
something.
Stephen.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'll
wait
get
a minute.
there.
A little
He has
slow
been.
to the draw there.
Yeah, if I'm with one child for more than 12 hours straight, I'm calling the police and being like, "Get my wife home right now."
You're like, I don't know how, but everything's on fire.
I'm actually kind of impressed. This man's been with 2 kids
Well,
for
he's
5
a
days.
stay-at-home
Well-
dad, so he's got some practice, like, wrangling.
Well, he is, and he does. And I'll get into a little bit more of that in just a little bit.
okay.
But he told the police that he didn't worry in the beginning because his wife is gone a lot and leaves just out of the blue.
Really?
I would insert the eye roll emoji here if I could.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very big on emojis.
Yeah.
I feel like our whole life should be illustrated with emojis.
Yeah,
You
when
can
you-
never go wrong with emojis. I know exactly what your text message means.
Yeah.
If you
Rachel
put,
actually chastised me.
I
She's
did.
like, I need you to use more emojis when you text me.
It's true. I did.
It's because Rachel literally is a human emoji.
Yeah.
She cannot hide her emotions.
No, you can't control your face. I think of it as a
True.
blessing, really.
I mean,
That's why I
do
know
too.
if I make you mad.
You always know where you stand with Rachel.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he told police that he overheard her talking to someone on the phone, telling them that she would meet them at the end of her driveway.
Okay.
He claims he then saw her get into a dark colored car and then drove off, and he hasn't heard from her since.
Okay.
The police were like, this is weird. You're a number 1 suspect here, buddy. It just was not adding up. Now, he was a stay-at-home dad, and she was gone 5 days a week.
Okay.
So she worked out of...
Oh, she did travel for work?
Yeah, she traveled for
okay.
work. And at this point in her career, she was living essentially in Puerto Rico. So she would live in San Juan from Monday to Friday, fly home to Detroit on Friday, and stay home until Sunday. So yeah, police were like, yeah, this is weird. And so one day later, they arrested him on a suspended license, which he accused them of just arresting him, to use it as an excuse to hold him for the murder.
Oh, yeah.
Or disappearance. Man, I gave that one away.
You can do it over again if you want.
So the police denied that they held him for that. But yeah, I definitely believe that they did. They're not going to admit that, I guess. So I couldn't figure out how long they kept him for, but apparently he was released and immediately threw himself into the media and the police's investigation. Police said that he was constantly trying to put himself in the middle and help. That was air quotes I put around help. And there was a local reporter that had covered the story from like the start to the end. And he stated that Steven would call him 20 times a day sometimes.
Steven,
what?
You need to calm down.
That's actually something I've heard about people who are guilty. That some people, they actually want to insert themselves into the investigation to be close, sometimes to know exactly where the investigation is going and how close investigators are getting. Or other times just because they want to see the reaction that people are having to something they've done.
That is so twisted.
It's super weird. And he would ask the reporter questions like, he was like concerned about his appearance and how did I come across on the TV? What did I look like? Should I get my hair cut? Like these absurd questions that no one cares about.
It's like, which tie says my wife is missing, but I also didn't kill her?
Yeah.
This one?
Like, I'm grieving right now.
Okay. So police found him suspicious, found that suspicious. I mean, who does that? And finally they were able to get a search warrant for the Grant's home. Oddly enough, the day they got the warrant, Steven had actually been on the phone with that same reporter, begging him to come and interview him again at his house. Really? But this time he wanted to do it in the garage, which was kind of strange. And the reporter thought so too. Well, when the reporter arrived, it was the same day the police would end up searching the house. And Steven didn't know it. So when the police arrived, and they obviously wouldn't let the reporter come, into the area. But when the police arrived, Steven excused himself to go walk the dog. So at this point, they can't, they hadn't put him under arrest because they haven't found anything. So, he was free to do that. So the officers searched the home and they didn't find much at first glance. But upon entering the garage, an officer noticed something that looked out of place, and it was a plastic bin. Well, at this point, the officers were looking for Steven. Remember, he said he was walking the dog. Well, of course he wasn't. Surprise, surprise, he fled.
No.
So, right. He fled for days, actually. They found him 2 days later after tracking his phone.
What?
Because he made a call to his sister. And apparently he took a friend's car so it couldn't be tracked.
Really?
We're not really sure if the friend knew what was going on.
Oh, okay.
Apparently,
So he stole
Steven.
it.
Yeah. Anyways, they found him up north in northern Michigan's Wilderness State Park, which is about 4.5 hours away.
Okay.
Now, for all of you non-Michiganders, up north is a thing here.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I remember when we moved here
Y'all
from
learned
Texas
that.
and we thought we were up north.
The most north that we could be, we thought.
Yeah, we literally have to drive south to get to the Canadian border.
Yeah. No.
And I remember when we first moved here, we had friends that would tell us they were going up north for the weekend. And we're like, up north? We are up north.
You're like, no, farther up north.
Yeah, like how much further north can you go?
The North
But-
Pole.
Well, there's plenty of northern areas, people.
Well, and it's just a general term for people that are driving north, usually up to a cabin of sorts.
Yeah, and apparently
it's not a specified location.
Well, and apparently everyone in Michigan has a weekend cottage.
Yeah,
that's
no,
what
I
we
don't.
figured out.
Yeah, no, my family's like, we hate camping. The outdoors, disgusting.
Sign me up. Me too.
You're like, give me AC.
Yes.
Rachel's version of
And a
camping
pool.
is like the Hampton Inn.
Yeah,
It's true.
that, you know what? Sometimes that's worse than camping. Camping?
Camping. This sounds like my personal.
Hell?
Yes.
Yeah,
it
you
does.
also don't even like, I've never seen you step on grass before.
Okay. So
My wife also hates sand.
I love sand.
I wish it was like that kinetic sand that just like fell away.
I love that
That
stuff.
sounds great. Someone needs to invent that for the whole
The whole
Great
planet.
Lake border.
So
Yes.
God, we have a couple
Yes.
suggestions
We
for your
have some
planet.
suggestions. So remember, it's February. It's cold. It's in Michigan. So it's like real cold.
Yeah.
And it's up north. Apparently, he spent the night in the freezing cold.
Oh.
Hypothermia had started to set in. He
Oh,
was
wow.
in and out of consciousness, had some frostbite in different areas. Literally, I mean,
Yikes.
who does that?
A
Who does
guilty
that?
man.
Yeah.
They airlifted him to a hospital, and while he was recouping, they put him under arrest, obviously, and then he confessed to his wife's murder.
Oh.
So on I said it was February a second ago. It was not February. I apologize. I messed that up. It was November.
November's still cold in Michigan.
Yeah. So this is his version of events.
Got it.
It's as follows, okay? So on November 9th, Tara arrived home to her house from San Juan, Puerto Rico, again, where she had been working and commuting. Tara was unpacking like she always did on Fridays and usually stayed at the family home until Monday morning when she would go back to Puerto Rico. Well, that Friday evening, as she's unpacking, she informed Steven that she would be leaving Sunday instead, a day early. So understandably, Steven was not happy by this news. He felt like his wife and the mother to their children was never home. They started to get into an argument, and it quickly escalated with Tara slapping Steven in the face. This apparently was his tipping point, and it went from an argument to just flat out enraging Steven. He slapped Tara back, causing her to fall down and hit her head.
Uh-oh.
She, while on the floor, you know, she's mad. He just hit her in the head.
Yeah.
Starts threatening that she's going to take the kids away from him. She's going to kick him out. He's going to be homeless. And also called him a few expletives as well. So he immediately started to strangle his wife and the mother of his children.
Oh my God.
He said that she tried to fight back, and he thought at this point he had gone too far. So he just kept going. He said he was going to go to prison.
What?
Oh my God.
So it's going to get a little disturbing past this point. So I'm just going to let our listeners know. Proceed with caution.
He knew though. He already. Oh,
He did. So he felt like, well, if I stop now, when she goes to the police, I'm going to go to jail. So he just kept going, was enraged. He said at one point he even put an article of clothing over her face so he didn't have to look at her.
Oh my God.
That is the
Yes.
worst. That is the
know.
worst.
I told you it was going to get a little particularly disturbing.
Oh,
That's not even the worst. It gets so much worse.
Oh.
He just continued to strangle her until she was dead. He then grabbed a belt
What?
and put it around her neck because he knew he couldn't carry her down the stairs. Yes. So he drug her down the stairs like an animal
Oh my,
My
God.
Yes.
Steven.
into the garage.
Oh Lord.
He said that he struggled to get her into the SUV and he dropped her. This is one of the worst quotes I think I've ever heard. This is his quote from his mouth to the officers. It was the most disgusting noise I'd ever heard. It sounded like a watermelon hitting the cement. I knew then that I had killed her.
Oh my
I know.
God.
I know.
Ew,
He is
ew, ew.
terrible. He's a terrible man.
He has such vivid memories
I know.
of what he did.
I know.
So this is what he's
This is what
Confessing.
he's telling. Yes. So he put her.
I mean, this is a detailed confession.
Well,
I
and
know.
there's an emotional description too, which
Yes,
is the
for
most
sure.
disturbing part.
So He put her into the SUV and he left her there. Just moments after this happened, the nanny arrives and he says he saw Tara walk out on him, and then he tries to stage numerous phone calls and messages to Tara's phone.
Oh my gosh.
The nanny arrived just moments
I
later.
guess it was like her scheduled time or something. I don't really know. The next day, he drives to his father's machine shop.
Oh, Rachel.
No.
Rachel.
Oh no.
My wife is literally mouthing the words, I'm sorry.
No laughing when we're talking about dismemberment.
It's a coping mechanism.
It
It's
absolutely
Oh my
is.
god. Okay, so
I'm laughing so I don't cry or throw up. It's really...
so,
It's a stress reliever, really.
yeah, it's just terrible.
My
Who knew that when
God.
we decided to do a true crime podcast, it would be hard to find charming criminals?
Why can't they all
I
be
know.
classy like DB Cooper? I'm
It's
trying
just
to
awful.
go into my sweater, like
Kelsey is literally pulling her.
There have been
every
multiple
appendage
times where I
into the-
put my head in my sweater. It got
She's
stuck
like
on
a
my top
turtle over
knot.
here.
It like,
So the next day, he drives to his father's machine shop and proceeds to dismember her body.
oh dear God.
He wraps the body parts in plastic and fills a large bin to the rim. Then he took the bin with her remains to Stony Creek Park.
This is so weird hearing
I know.
places that we go to.
I know. He grabs one of his children's sleds, puts the bin on it because it's too heavy for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's standing on a hill with the sled. He says the sled took off without him,
Oh, that's how gravity works.
and
my
he
friend.
chases the sled down the hill, and the bin broke.
Oh.
His wife's remains fell everywhere, so he had to pick them up, put them back on the sled, and he
So
buried them
incompetent.
all around Stony Creek.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
He said that he hoped the elements and the animals would kind of get
Hide
rid
the
of
evidence.
the evidence.
Yeah.
And he apparently moved the remains multiple times.
Like he came back?
Within 5 days. Because he called to report her missing after 5 days, right?
Right.
So
So
he went back a couple times within a week.
yeah,
God.
this is one of the worst cases I think I have ever heard, and just so despicable. I just feel so uncomfortable. But the police had their suspicions about Stony Creek Park because apparently during some of these multiple media appearances, he kept mentioning the park.
Oh my gosh.
Guys, this can't be November. I've said that twice now. This is not November. Are you going to be
Well.
able to fix that?
We'll
Just
be able to
every time
substitute every...
on February. It's like,
It's like those
It's-
bad dub-overs where like every time they cuss, it's
Brant's
like,
voice.
Mamma Jamma, every time he cusses.
Okay, I'm sorry. So
It's okay.
It is February because I remembered
You don't have to apologize. You.
because he called it in on Valentine's Day.
Oh, my
Oh.
God.
So the police had their suspicions and started to search Stony Creek Park because of all the times that Stephen had mentioned on his countless TV appearances, he kept mentioning Stony Creek Park. Like randomly would somehow be able to bring it up in all of
weird.
What a
these
weirdo.
TV.
Like some Freudian slip.
Maybe.
Oh, Lord.
So a jogger had found a Ziploc bag that was in a tree that had gloves, metal shavings, and blood, which was confirmed to be Tara's. Stephen apparently went to retrieve the body parts and move them again, but he was only to grab what was in plain sight because apparently he did not hide them well. So he grabbed the remains that he could and put them back in remember the garage?
Yeah.
Remember the plastic bin?
He brought them back to
There's
his house.
Another bin.
It was his wife's torso. He retrieved it and he took it to his dad's machine shop.
Again?
Yes, and he left it there for about a day, but was concerned that it was going to start smelling. So he took it again and moved it and put it in his garage, and that's where the police found it. Apparently...
So it wasn't supposed to be there long. It was being temporarily housed in his garage.
Oh my.
And that's where the police found it.
At this point, I can't imagine anybody believing that this murder was premeditated. It seems like he is flying by the seat of his pants the entire time.
Yeah, well, so he was formally charged on March 6th, and he was found guilty on December 21st in murder in the second degree. He was sentenced to a minimum of 50 to 80 years in prison. And thank God he just lost his final appeal in 2010.
Thank God.
They took like less than 30 minutes to decide.
Yeah.
So he lost his final appeal. On April 13th, Stephen's confessions were released to the public, including a written confession. Tara's family, who also has the kids, her sister does, she has decided with the family that one day they will let the kids read them, the confessions.
I've actually heard in other cases that kids whose parents have committed horrible things actually want to hear it from their own parents. It's almost like it brings them closure, because I've heard it's worse for kids whose parents never admit what they did, because it leaves them wondering the whole time, should I be disgusted with you or not? And they're very confused. And so it wouldn't surprise me if those letters somehow do bring them some kind of closure for losing, because they lost their dad and their mom.
Hold on, I meant to do this earlier and I totally forgot. It's a domestic violence hotline. I need to make sure it's still active before I give the number out. I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure I had the correct number. I wanted to give this number to someone. Is this a domestic abuse hotline? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure it still worked before I gave all of our listeners the number.
Good call.
Okay.
Also, if we're ever investigated and cops find that you have called the domestic abuse hotline, I am in some hot water.
You did not do this. I called it.
This was also recorded.
Yes, this was, well, yeah.
It is October 26th.
It is approximately 10:39, and I made that call at 10:39.
We've been in this tent a long time. We're like, what day is it?
Is it November?
One thing I didn't mention was, friends and family had said, they weren't, she was a catch, and, he was super awkward and not very good looking. Even, friends, from high school and stuff said that. Yeah, he has, weird eyes, apparently.
People said he had weird eyes?
His eyes are, so
I've
weird.
never had a visceral reaction to somebody like that. I can't look.
I'm looking at this photo on Kelsey's phone of this man.
I don't say it lightly. He will give me nightmares. God. Oh.
So at first they thought the nanny was in on it, but they were able to quickly rule her out. Yeah. He did have an affair with her.
He did.
I didn't want to bring it up earlier because...
Crazy eyes?
I know. Yeah, he did. Because she was the only, adult for him to talk to. So... Sorry, that was my exercise ball. So,
please excuse the squeaking. Oh,
yes, I apologize. And Kelsey just
I said, we're a very professional podcast.
So professional.
So, yeah, and there's also been 2 books written about the case, too. So you can check those out. Each year, Turning Point, it's a Metro Detroit help service. They host a 5K event with Alicia, who's Tara's sister, Lindsay and Ian, who are Tara's children, and the walk is to raise awareness about domestic violence. And
wow.
Through Turning Point, over 10,000 crisis calls have been made.
Oh, wow.
And more than 480 have found shelter. But I do want to take a second, and I want to say that if anyone here is experiencing any type of domestic violence, any type of domestic abuse, it is not okay. I can't put myself in your shoes, but there are people out there who can help you. And this domestic abuse hotline was made just for that. That number to the Turning Point Hotline is 586-463-6990. And if you know of anyone who is suffering from domestic violence or you yourself are, please give them a call. They're there to help.
This is why we end with our mugshot
Yeah.
stories,
That's a real good call.
because I cannot handle.
Being like, well, and that's it. Have a good night, guys. Bye.
Yeah. If I even watch a Dateline, I can't go to bed without an episode of Frasier.
Just to balance it out a little
Yes.
bit.
Yeah. So Kelsey's got a mugshot story for us. These are always going to be fun, weird, strange stories that
Yeah.
don't always have a lot of details,
Right.
but they're worth talking about.
Yeah. This one, it's not so much what this particular criminal did to end up in jail. It's kind of what he did after. We'll get into it.
Okay, excited.
Me
So
too.
it's 4th of July. Actually, this past 4th of July, 2019.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. So
Wow.
this happened, 3 months ago? So we've got Stephen Ray Ham, who is 45, and he fled from the Humphreys County Jail on the 4th of July at 8 p.m. So they don't know how he escaped, but apparently he was held in prison for theft of property, burglary of a motor vehicle, and failure to pay child support. So obviously not really a stand-up guy, but it's not, as far as we know, it's not really anything violent.
It's not like our last case.
It's not like former Stephen that we just talked about. He was able to escape around 8 p.m. And like I said, they don't know how he managed to escape custody.
Really?
Yeah. But all they know is that 7 hours later, around 3 a.m., Mr. Stephen Ray Ham just decides to come back to the Humphreys County Jail.
What?
Yeah.
Like he just
comes
waltzed
back.
in?
He just
Who
comes
does
back
that?
after he fled the facility. And so it is likely that he's going to face additional charges for the jailbreak, which
Yeah.
isn't surprising.
This is like when I was a kid and my parents would tell me, just tell us the truth, son.
Yeah.
You won't get in trouble if you tell us the truth.
And
And
they're
then
like, you're
you
like,
admit to
Mhm.
something you've done and you
Like, you are grounded.
Yeah.
Like, what? You just said I wasn't going to get in trouble.
you get a greater punishment.
So there was no mention really why. Well, we all know why he escaped, because he didn't want to go to
be
prison.
there.
Yeah, he's like, I'm bored. I guess I should say it was jail, so I feel like the security
Oh.
is not as high.
Sure, it's not maximum security. prison.
Exactly.
I know, but
But they didn't.
you
really,
don't hear about people escaping
No,
jail a lot
no.
either.
So they didn't mention how he escaped, and they didn't really mention why he came back either. Maybe.
Maybe he just had like a guilty conscience.
Yeah, so he's not like a particularly friendly looking fellow.
Oh, look at his eyes.
Yeah,
too.
he's got real crazy eyes and a real,
Ugh.
as I would say, or as my father would say, he's got like a 7 head instead of a 4 head.
Oh God.
He does have a massive forehead.
He has a massive forehead. In the like news release that they sent out when there was an escaped inmate, they were offering a cash reward with 2 exclamation points after it, which I feel like is a lot
That's a
for
big
a
deal.
police department. But
The only thing better than that is if they like put some emojis on there.
yeah, like 2 thumbs up and then like a flexing muscle. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have to be strong. You might not be violent, but I don't-
Wanted dead or alive, winky
We're-
face.
Okay, this is crazy because
Did you find something that I didn't?
well, it's saying in a similar but a more bizarre case,
Oh, great, I should have picked this one.
a man
Gosh.
who escaped Louisiana's East
of course it
Parish
was
prison in
Louisiana.
2003 while
Uh-huh.
serving time for burglary, returned to the prison 15 years later.
15 years?
Yeah.
I should have done that one.
Well, that brings us to
Not on that note.
That brings us to the end of our episode as my wife slowly rolls off her exercise ball and onto the floor.
Hits her chin on the desk. Dear Lord.
I didn't do that. I was
No.
close, but I did not.
We all need to get exercise balls and just bounce around while we tell these stories. Well, if you need more Hot Cup Cold Case in your life, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Hot Cup Cold Case Podcast. We're also on YouTube. And you can email us at hotcupcoldcasepodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We're actually collecting personal stories about anybody who has a criminal encounter. We have some personal stories we're going to share in future episodes. So if you have a personal story about a criminal encounter, you can reach out to us through social media or our email. And also,
Just a case that you want covered.
yeah, we would love some case suggestions. And also rate us and review us.
Rachel, you need to stop, drop, and roll.
She's about to
It's about to
stop,
roll
roll,
on
and drop
Yeah.
on that exercise ball. If you ever need your mug filled,
Or your spine chilled.
this is Hot Cup.
Cold case.
Nailed it. You guys and your cough drops. That is so disgusting. I
I'm not
cannot
gonna-
believe you stuck on those just for fun.
It's not for fun. It's for the taste.
It's for the mental high.
That makes it even worse. Who loves the taste of it?
I do.
I do too.
I can understand if you actually got a high. You'd be like, the taste is bad, but
No.
it's worth the high. But you're like, no,
As
the
we
taste.
know, I have already done extensive research on the
Yes.
long-standing.
Long-term effects.
Thank you. Long-term effects of mass consumption of cough drops.
Another weird
And-
place on the internet.
You know, maybe that will explain some of my problems.
I'm just gonna
right
say
now.
one of them was general confusion.
Which
Shut up.
sounds eerily familiar, Rachel.
I hate
Who is
both of you.
generally confused
Just general confusion.
a lot of the
Okay,
time.
Just about
Both of you
everything.
suck.
Like the cough drop?
Whoa.
Whoa.
Kelsey with the jokes.
Hey. All right.